That evening wasn't supposed to be anything out of the ordinary. It was a Wednesday, just one of those midweek slogs where everything at work moved slow, and nobody wanted to be there. I had a late afternoon meeting that I wasn't exactly looking forward to, but about an hour before it was set to start, I got an email. Cancelled. Just like that, my evening opened up. A little unexpected pocket of time. So I figured I'd take advantage of it. There's this small cafe near the corner of 8th and Mason I go to when I need to clear my head. A quiet spot with decent coffee and creaky old chairs that force you to sit still. I ordered a cup, checked a few emails, and started scrolling mindlessly. I wasn't in a rush to get home. Amber had told me she was going out with some friends from her old office. She said it might run late. "Don't wait up," she'd added that morning, breezing out the door in that denim jacket she rarely wore. She seemed rushed but smiled on her way out. I didn't think twice about it. But then I pulled into our driveway and saw her car. I remember sitting there for a solid 10 seconds, engine running, eyes fixed on the familiar shape of her Camry. That gut drop feeling hit me. Not a full punch, just a flutter in the chest. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not yet. I checked the time again. 6:42 p.m. Definitely early. Maybe the plans fell through. Maybe one of her friends bailed and she just came home. That happens, right? I tried to tell myself that. Really, I did. But as I stepped inside, something just felt off. The air inside the house was warm and a little humid, like someone had taken a hot shower not long ago. The TV was off. The lights were dimmed. Her shoes were by the door, kicked off carelessly, too carelessly. Usually, she tucked them to the side. This time, they were just there, like someone had rushed out of them. I called her name. No answer. The bedroom door was halfway open, and the moment I stepped through, everything tilted. There was a men's shirt slung over the back of the chair near the window, crumpled, casual, like it had been taken off in a hurry. First, I thought maybe it was mine, but I moved closer and the details unraveled that idea fast. Different brand, slimmer fit. The collar had that stylish narrow cut I never wore. And then there was the smell. Strong. Masculine. A mix of sandalwood and something spicy. Definitely not anything I owned. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. It still held warmth. That was the part that chilled me most. It wasn't cold from sitting out all day. Whoever wore it hadn't left long ago. Then I looked over at the bed. Sheets crumpled. Comforter dragged half off the mattress. A pillow with an impression in it that wasn't mine. I took a breath and sat on the edge of the bed, scanning the room like it might explain itself if I just gave it a second. That's when I saw the faint red mark on the nightstand side of the bed. A glass of water with condensation beating down its side. Someone had been there. Recently. A few moments later, I heard the water running in the master bathroom. Then footsteps. Light, bare. The door opened, and there she was. Amber, wrapped in her gray robe, damp hair clinging to her neck, holding a towel in one hand and a bottle of conditioner in the other. She froze when she saw me, not in panic, not in guilt, just surprised, like I'd interrupted something she hadn't expected me to witness. "Oh, you're home early," she said casually, walking in like it was just another Wednesday evening. No explanation offered, no rush to hide anything. She spotted the shirt in my hands and tilted her head slightly, like she just remembered it was there. "Oh, that," she added, already waving it off with a little laugh. "My cousin stopped by earlier. He's in town for a tech conference. Left that behind while he showered." She shrugged like it was nothing, then tossed her towel into the hamper without looking at me. Her cousin? Since when did she have a cousin in town? Amber has exactly 2 cousins that I know of. One lives in Oregon and the other in North Carolina. Neither has ever stopped by our place, let alone used our shower. "Didn't you say you were going out with Maya and Denise?" I asked, voice low. I hated how small it sounded, like I was already second-guessing myself. She nodded nonchalantly. "Yeah, that was the plan, but they flaked last minute. So, I figured I'd just stay in and catch up with Nick." Nick? Her cousin now had a name. She moved past me toward the dresser like we weren't having this bizarre, reality-twisting conversation. I watched her open the top drawer and pull out a pair of leggings, moving so naturally it almost made me question myself. Almost. But my gut hadn't lied to me before, and it wasn't lying now. She was too smooth, too composed, like she'd rehearsed this in the mirror earlier. The story came too quickly. There was no hesitation in her voice, just a clean, effortless delivery. All the right pauses, all the right words. I could practically see the script in her mind. "What did you guys talk about?" I asked, pretending to fold the shirt back into place. The scent of cologne was still thick in the air. "Oh, she replied, sliding her phone into her back pocket. "Tech stuff. He's really into AI now." I couldn't keep up. She grinned, like she was amused with herself. "You'd have liked it." I gave a tight nod. We stood there for a moment, both of us silently pretending nothing was wrong. She pulled out her makeup bag and walked toward the bathroom. I stayed in the bedroom, staring at the shirt still in my hand, the one she hadn't made a move to retrieve or even glance at again. I heard the faint chime of her phone vibrating in the next room. She didn't check it. I placed the shirt on the back of the chair again, right where I found it, but with a little more care. Like I wanted it to sit there and haunt the space the way it had just started haunting me. Later that night, she offered to order takeout, asking if I wanted Thai or sushi, like we were in some version of normal. I went with Thai. She smiled and nodded, like that meant things were fine. But I watched the way she avoided eye contact, how she kept wiping down the counter even after it was clean. The shirt never came up again, and I didn't push. Not right away. But in the quiet that followed that night, something started unraveling. Something I'd kept tightly wrapped for too long. That shirt was the first thread. That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table with the takeout containers still half full. She'd barely touched hers. Claimed she wasn't that hungry. I wasn't either, really. I chewed through maybe 5 bites before the taste turned to sand in my mouth. But I sat there anyway, chopsticks in hand, eyes fixed on nothing, letting the silence stretch long and uncomfortable. I couldn't sleep. Not with that shirt still folded in my memory like a glaring headline I couldn't stop reading. She had gone upstairs early, showered again. I could hear the water running through the floorboards. That detail stuck with me. Why would she need 2 showers in one evening? Maybe she felt dirty. Maybe she needed to erase something. I told myself to stop, to not spiral. But the spiral was already in motion. I laid on the couch, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Just months ago, we'd gone to Big Bear for a weekend getaway. Her face was lit up in every *T, hair messy from the wind, cheeks red from the cold. I looked at her eyes, really looked, and wondered if she had already started checking out back then. I didn't want to believe it, but a quiet part of me whispered, yes. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I just laid there, blinking at the ceiling, the sound of the heater clicking on and off. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that shirt. I smelled that unfamiliar cologne. And that's when it started, this mental unpacking of everything I'd ignored for months. Like the way she'd stopped leaving her phone on the kitchen counter. It used to just sit there while we cooked dinner together, playing music or propped open with some recipe she wanted to try. Now it was always face down, always locked, always within arm's reach. She'd even started taking it with her when she went to shower. At first, I thought it was work stress, or maybe just the general creep of distance that happens in long-term relationships. You start to drift without realizing you're drifting. But it wasn't just distance, it was secrecy. Her schedule had grown unpredictable. She started coming home later, citing back-to-back meetings or spontaneous drinks with old coworkers. There were nights she'd text me last minute to say she was running behind or don't wait up, and like an idiot, I never questioned it. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, the way you do when you still believe the person you love couldn't lie to your face. Even her voice had changed, just slightly. Softer when she talked to clients on the phone. Lighter. Sometimes she'd retreat to the back porch for those calls, pacing with her arms crossed, smiling in that private way that made me feel like I was watching a stranger play dress-up in my wife's skin. I remembered one night in particular. She was in the bathroom, door halfway closed, and I could hear her laughing, really laughing, in this int asterisk mate, hush tone. Not the kind of laugh she gave to me anymore. I called out, "What's so funny?" She answered without skipping a beat, "Just a podcast." Her favorite line lately. I believed her then. I didn't now. And it wasn't just the new habits, it was the disappearance of the old ones. She stopped waiting up for me when I worked late. No more "How was your day?" while I changed out of my dress shirt. No more spontaneous hugs in the hallway. Just silence. The kind that pretends to be peaceful but is really just tired. I started noticing little things. How she always had a reason to be out on Sundays. Brunch with a friend. A long walk to clear her head. She never invited me. And if I offered to come along, she'd flash this tight smile and say, "You've been working so much, you should relax." Even the playlists changed. She used to share music with me, songs that made her think of us. One time she sent me this mellow track with the message, "This is how you feel to me." That was a year ago. Now she wore earbuds constantly, even around the house. I asked her what she was listening to once. She said, "Just this late-night poetry podcast. Super boring, trust me." I smiled, but inside I thought, since when do you listen to poetry? I remember opening our laundry basket one day and finding a pair of jeans that weren't hers. Men's jeans. I held them up, confused, and brought them to her in the living room. "Are these yours?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She barely glanced up from her laptop. "Oh, those must be from when my brother visited last month. He crashed for a night. Remember?" I remembered, but he hadn't brought anything with him. I shrugged and tossed them aside. I didn't ask more questions. I didn't want the answers. It's embarrassing now, how far I bent over backward to avoid the truth. I rationalized everything. The phone turned face down? Privacy. Everyone's entitled to it. The new perfume that clung to her scarves? Just a gift from a coworker. The nights she came home with makeup slightly smudged. Lips redone in a hurry? Traffic, maybe. Or the weather. But denial doesn't hold forever. Cracks. Frays around the edges. And sometimes all it takes is one careless thing. A shirt, left in plain sight, to shatter the whole illusion. I started checking things I hadn't before. Her tablet, for instance. It was synced to her work email, and sometimes she forgot to log out. I'd never looked through it before, but now curiosity had teeth. I told myself I was just verifying, protecting my peace of mind. I didn't find anything that night, but I felt the shift. I had crossed into a place where trust didn't live anymore. A few days later, I mentioned the shirt again, just to see her reaction. We were folding laundry. I said, "Did your cousin ever pick up that shirt?" She blinked for half a second, just long enough, and said, "Oh yeah, I gave it to him the next morning. He stopped by while you were still asleep." I nodded slowly. Funny, I didn't hear the door. She didn't reply, just kept folding. Quiet, efficient. That's when I realized I'd been replaced in the narrative of my own life. She was still living in our house, still sleeping beside me, but she was writing a different story. A version where I was no longer the main character, just a supporting role she'd grown tired of. The hardest part wasn't anger. It was mourning. Not just for the woman I thought she was, but for the version of me who believed her without hesitation. That guy? He was fading, replaced by someone slower, more cautious. Someone who measured every word, replayed every conversation like a crime scene, looking for clues he'd missed the first time. I kept thinking back to the early days. How she'd wrap her arms around me in the kitchen while I made coffee. How she used to leave notes in my lunch bag, like we were teenagers in love. That was real. I know it was. But somewhere along the line, the thread unraveled. Slowly, quietly. Now, we were two people playing pretend. Sitting across from each other at dinner, asking safe questions, avoiding the real ones. She'd smile when I told a joke, but it never reached her eyes. I'd ask how her day went, and she'd shrug and say, "The usual." Every answer was just a placeholder. I started sleeping later, going in to work earlier. Not because I had to, but because the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place where I was being tolerated, watched, avoided. I told myself I wasn't going to snoop, that I wasn't going to become that guy, the insecure husband hunting for passwords, looking through texts. But I also knew that if something doesn't feel right, it usually isn't. I wasn't looking for a smoking G*N. I was looking for peace of mind. But something told me I wouldn't find it. Not in this house. Not anymore. Came in the form of an envelope. Plain, white, unmarked. I almost tossed it in the recycling with the usual credit card offers and cable promotions. But something made me stop. There was no return address, just my name typed in block letters on the front. No handwriting, no postage. It had been slipped directly into our mailbox. Inside, there was a single photograph. Amber, sitting in a restaurant booth. Not just any restaurant. It was the place we used to go for anniversaries. Quiet, tucked away, a little overpriced but worth it. We hadn't been there in nearly a year, ever since things started shifting. I'd stopped suggesting it, and she never brought it up again. In the photo, she was leaning forward slightly, a glass of red wine in hand, her expression soft, *mate. And across from her, holding her hand in plain view, was a man I didn't recognize. Short cropped hair, confident posture, a dark button-down shirt rolled up at the sleeves. His fingers were interlaced with hers, like they'd done this 100 times. They weren't laughing. They weren't even talking. They were just there, present, comfortable. The timestamp on the bottom corner read 2 nights ago. I sat on the edge of the couch, the photo trembling slightly in my hands, and I felt my breath stutter. Not because I was surprised, but because it was finally real. Everything I had felt in my gut, everything I had tried to reason away, there it was, concrete, proof. And the weirdest part? I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. Cold, calm clarity. I didn't confront her. Not that night. Not even the next day. I wanted to be smarter than that. Cleaner. If she had built her betrayal carefully, I wanted to dismantle it with equal precision. I waited until she left for yoga, her new Monday ritual. Another recent change. She always left her tablet on the coffee table, plugged into the wall. It was synced to her phone, something we set up years ago when we shared playlists, calendar reminders, vacation plans. I opened the Messages app. At first, it was just the usual threads, group chats with her sister, a few colleagues, old friends. But one name stood out, Derek. I didn't know a Derek. And the chat. It went back months. I clicked into the thread, and with every scroll, my heart sank a little deeper into my chest. There were dozens, no, hundreds of messages. They weren't explicit, but they didn't need to be. The *Macy in them was louder than anything physical. It was in the tone, the rhythm, the nicknames. Things like, I keep thinking about the way you looked at me last night. Every time I walk into our kitchen, I think of you standing there. I can't stop imagining what life would be like if it was just us. Some were poetic. Long streams of late-night thoughts like digital confessions. Being around him feels like I'm in a waiting room. I've been staring at the same wall for years, hoping someone calls my name. I'm not unhappy. I just feel invisible. But it was how she talked about me that did the real damage. She wrote about me like I was a piece of furniture. Reliable, silent, emotionally muted. She told Derek she felt like she was slowly erasing herself in our marriage. That she longed for escape. Tulum, Lisbon. Anywhere that didn't involve shared grocery lists and polite conversations over reheated leftovers. I saw my name once. Just once. Kelvin still doesn't ask questions. It's easier that way. That one burned. And then I saw the photo. The same one I'd received anonymously, except this version was clearer, uncropped. Amber had sent it to Derek with the caption, "Stolen time, worth every second." I leaned back in the chair, set the tablet down, and stared out the window. I felt numb, not hollow, not shattered, just quiet. I thought about how many times she must have looked me in the eye after typing those things. How many dinners we sat through while she counted down the hours to someone else. I remembered the night I'd surprised her with flowers after work. A random Tuesday. She'd smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "You're too good to me." That same night, she'd messaged Derek. It's scary how easily I can lie now. I closed the tablet. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. There was no movie-worthy meltdown. Just this slow exhale of something I hadn't realized I'd been holding in. It was the illusion, and it was finally gone. Over the next few days, I became someone else. Not cold, just detached. I still went to work. Still answered emails. Still said, "Bless you," when someone sneezed in the elevator. But inside, I was walking through ash. Amber didn't notice at first. Or maybe she did and just hoped I was distracted again. She still kissed my cheek before bed. Still asked if I needed anything when she ran errands. But it all felt like choreography, movements memorized long ago. One night, I asked her how yoga was. She lit up instantly. So good. We had a guest instructor who talked about body alignment and emotional release. It was actually kind of deep. I nodded. I wanted to ask her how Derek was. I wanted to say his name and watch her flinch. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I started to plan. I printed the photo. Not the one from the envelope, the clearer one, the one from her own messages. I didn't know who sent the original. Maybe it was someone trying to help. Or maybe it was someone playing their own game. Either way, they gave me a match. Now I had to decide what to burn. I started documenting. I exported the messages, organized the timestamps, highlighted the ones where she mentioned our marriage, her unhappiness, her intentions to slip away clean. It felt clinical, like building a case. But maybe that's what I needed, to strip it of emotion and reduce it to evidence. I also started talking to a lawyer. Quietly. My sister, actually. She practiced family law across town. We hadn't been especially close growing up, but she always had my back when it counted. When I told her what was happening, she didn't gasp or react. She just said, "Okay, let's get you covered first." She walked me through the next steps. Accounts, assets, paper trails, all the unromantic stuff that still somehow mattered more than vows once the dust started settling. "Don't confront her yet," she warned. "Not until you've decided what you want. And when you do, make sure she can't twist it into a conversation." That line stuck with me. Don't let her turn it into a conversation. Because that's what Amber was good at, narratives. She knew how to make you feel like you were overreacting, like your gut was misfiring. She knew how to smile through a lie, to turn an accusation into an oversensitive question. I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted a conclusion. The next time she left for yoga, I stood in the middle of our bedroom. The bed was made. Her side of the closet slightly ajar. Her perfume still clung to the air. I looked at the chair where that shirt had hung. Empty now. But the memory stayed. That was the night it all started unraveling. And now I wasn't just suspicious. I was sure. It started with a reservation. A quiet restaurant downtown, one Amber didn't know. Nothing flashy. Mid-tier, dim lighting, heavy menus, the kind of place where the tablecloths are always perfectly ironed. I chose it because it was neutral, clean, unattached to memory. I wanted a stage where everything could unfold without baggage. Where I could observe, where she could see without understanding everything at once. The reservation was for two. But the second seat wasn't for her. It was for Brian, her boss. The same Brian she always spoke about with an air of practiced casualness. He's intense but fair. Brian's kind of a workaholic. He's going through a divorce, poor guy. I'd met him once before, in passing, during a holiday party a couple of years back. He struck me as focused, unreadable, a little too polite. But then again, that's how people survive in leadership, by learning to smile with their teeth closed. Reaching out to him wasn't easy. I didn't want to accuse. I wasn't even sure what I was fishing for at first. But something about Amber's messages, particularly one where she referenced a work dinner with Brian, the usual cover, had lodged itself in my brain. Whether he knew what he was part of or not, I needed to see him, to put a face to the web. So I sent him a message through LinkedIn, kept it brief, told him I was Amber's husband and that I needed to speak with him privately. No accusations, just clarity. To my surprise, he responded, said he had some suspicions of his own, suggested we meet, and so we did. The night was cold but clear. I got to the restaurant 10 minutes early, took a seat by the window, ordered a bourbon neat, not because I wanted it but because I needed something to do with my hands. The place was quiet, the clink of glasses echoing softly under low music. Brian arrived right on time. Navy sport coat, no tie. He spotted me immediately, and his expression didn't change as he crossed the room. "Kelvin," he said, extending a hand. "Thanks for reaching out." We shook. Saturday. The moment had weight, like we were both sitting at the edge of something without knowing how deep it went. He didn't waste time. "I've seen things," he said quietly. I wasn't sure if I should get involved. I stayed silent, letting him decide how much to share. "I keep a respectful distance from my employees' personal lives," he continued. "But when someone starts using their position to manipulate schedules, lie about meetings, create fake offsite excuses, that raises questions, especially when it's paired with secrecy." I raised my eyebrows slightly. He nodded. "She's been seeing someone. Client, I think. But it's blurry. Whatever it isn't professional." I suspected Derek. I nodded. "You're right." He sat back in his chair, expression tight. "I had no intention of outing anyone. But I didn't want to keep pretending either." We talked for 20 minutes, carefully, not as men bonded by betrayal, but as two people acknowledging a shared inconvenience, someone else's lie stitched into our routines. When the server brought our entrees, Brian leaned in slightly. "You know she's watching you, right?" I paused. "What do you mean?" "She's unsure. She's hoping you'll either ignore it or explode. Both would make it easier for her." That landed. I looked up. Across the street, parked half a block down, was her car. Silver Camry. Lights off. Engine likely running. I didn't need to walk outside to confirm. I knew the shape of it like I knew the back of my hand. She was watching us. For a second, I imagined her behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel tightly, eyes fixed on the restaurant. She wouldn't have expected him to say yes. In her mind, Brian was just a prop. Another name to drop, another fake meeting to build a story around. But now he was here, and I was here, and she was parked in the shadows, staring at a version of the story she couldn't control. I kept my gaze steady, didn't turn to look directly at the car. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. Let her sit in the uncertainty. Let her wonder what I knew. Let her feel the helplessness I'd been drowning in for months. A moment later, her phone buzzed. She didn't expect it. That much I'm sure of. Maybe she flinched. Maybe she fumbled it in her lap. It was a message. No sender ID. Just a photo. A close-up of our dinner table from an angle that neither of us could have seen coming. Someone had been watching us from outside, through the glass, close enough to capture Brian mid-sentence. Fork in hand, me with a slight smile like nothing was wrong. Underneath, one line of text. "Nice wine selection." That's it. No name, no accusation. Just that unsettling sentence, heavy with implication. I'd been thinking about what closure might look like. For a while, I thought it would be an argument, her yelling, me yelling louder. Maybe slammed doors. Maybe a half-hearted apology followed by days of walking on eggshells. But this was cleaner. It wasn't war. It was surveillance. A reminder that secrets don't stay buried. Not forever. And she wasn't just losing control. She was being watched. I paid the bill. Brian offered to split it, but I waved him off. "Consider it my thanks," I said, "for showing up." As we walked out, I glanced once toward the Camry. Headlights flicked on. The engine purred to life. She didn't wait for me to notice. She pulled away into traffic, disappearing around the corner like a scene change in a play that had gone off script. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. She had seen enough. That night, I went home alone. The house was dark. She wasn't back yet. Maybe she was driving loops around the city, trying to rewrite what she saw into something less threatening. Maybe she was rehearsing a new excuse. But when she walked through the door at 11:04 p.m., she didn't say anything. Not even, hey. She just went straight upstairs. No questions. No explanations. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the urge to ask. I poured myself a drink. sat in silence, let the clock tick. It was no longer about catching her. It was about watching her realize she'd already been caught. It was a Thursday when she found the envelope. I was at work, sipping bad coffee in a conference room during a planning session that ran 30 minutes too long. My phone buzzed once in my pocket, then again. I ignored it. I knew what it was, knew exactly where she was, what drawer she had opened, what she was holding in her hand when her fingers started shaking. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, unassuming. Inside was a cleanly printed document 12 pages long. No legalese meant to int asterisk mid-8. No dramatic language. Just a straightforward separation agreement. Amber found it in the desk drawer next to the checkbook, under a stack of utility bills and old instruction manuals. I didn't hide it. I just waited. I imagined she opened it quickly, expecting receipts or invoices. Instead, she found everything she didn't think I was capable of. Asset breakdowns, shared accounts, lease responsibilities, health insurance provisions, car titles, a line item for furniture division, even instructions for handling the security deposit. All of it signed. By me. Her name was still blank, but mine was inked cleanly at the bottom in that slanted, steady print of mine she once said reminded her of architecture. Structured, even when angry. It had been drafted by my sister, Elise. She's a lawyer who does family law by day and mediation work on weekends. We've never been close, really. We drifted in our 20s and mostly texted on holidays. But when I showed up at her condo with a thumb drive full of messages and a photograph in a sealed envelope, she didn't ask questions. Just poured me coffee, slid a legal pad across the table, and said, "Start from the beginning." In the weeks that followed, she was clinical, unapologetically direct. She said things like, "This isn't about punishment, it's about dignity." Or, "You're not here to make her feel something. You're here to make a decision she can't manipulate." That was the thread I kept pulling. Make it unreactive. Make it about logistics, not revenge. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to beg. I just wanted to leave the table without flinching. The morning she found the document, I imagined how the day would play out. She'd read it once, fast, then again slower. Then she'd sit down, not in anger, not in panic, but in that still, stunned way you do when the narrative slips from your hands. Because for Amber, everything had always been a performance. The laughter that lingered too long, the innocence she wore like perfume, light, fragrant, conveniently forgettable. The stories she fed me always with the right emotional pacing, like she was auditioning for a part she no longer respected. And now the script had been taken away. When I got home, she was sitting in the hallway, the envelope open beside her, her hands clasped loosely in her lap. She didn't look up when I walked in, just stared at her knees, like they had answers she couldn't reach. "You had Elise do this," she said after a long silence. I nodded, set my keys on the entryway table, hung my coat. "No rush. I thought you didn't trust her." "I trust her with things that matter," I said. "This matters." She pressed her lips together, not in defiance, in restraint. There was no raised voice, no accusation. She didn't even ask what I knew. That told me everything. "What do you want me to say?" she asked finally. I turned to her, calm. "Nothing." She looked up at that. Really looked. For the first time in weeks, maybe longer. "You're not even mad?" I wanted to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because she didn't get it. "This isn't about being mad," I said. "This is about no longer pretending you're my partner." She blinked, swallowed hard. "We can talk about it," she offered, like a discount on a product already broken. I shook my head. There's nothing left to clarify. I walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of water. I didn't slam the door. I didn't move faster than usual. I just let silence carry the message she never expected me to deliver. "I don't need you to confess. I don't need you to explain. I already made peace with who you are." Later that evening, I found her sitting at the dining table, reading through the document again with a pen in her hand. Not signing, just underlining things. Notes in the margins. probably trying to find leverage. Amber always liked to tweak the terms. She wasn't built for absolutes. She looked up at me. "I'm surprised you're not making this ugly," she said. "I don't need ugly," I replied. "I just need out." She nodded almost to herself. "You planned all this? For a while. Why didn't you say anything? What would have changed?" She didn't answer. She didn't cry either. That was interesting. I expected tears. Or at least an emotional appeal. The "this isn't you" speech. The "we can fix this" refrain. Instead, she just folded the papers and set them neatly back into the envelope like it was a final exam she'd failed without studying. That's when it hit me. She didn't want to fight because she knew she'd already lost. I wasn't a man catching her in the act. I was a man who had finished the story before she'd realized I could read between the lines. Later that night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her footsteps soft against the hardwood as she moved through the hall. She opened drawers, closed them, moved slowly, like someone not sure if they still belonged in their own skin. In the morning, she was gone before I got up. She left a note on the counter. 2 lines. "I need time. I'll be at my sister's." No apology, just a pause, which in her mind was probably grace. I texted Elise that night, told her Amber had seen the papers, that she was processing. She replied in under a minute. "Let her. Don't follow. Let silence do what confrontation can't." I ***ted it, saved it. That weekend, I sat alone in the living room. No playlist, no TV, just stillness, and it felt peaceful, not triumphant, not victorious, just still. No buzzing lies in the walls, no rehearsed laughter in the hallway, no perfume hiding intention, just air, just space. And when I looked at the empty seat across from me, I didn't miss her. I just felt relieved it wasn't still pretending to be love. She baked the pie, apple cinnamon, just like early in our marriage. Flaky crust, golden edges, the whole kitchen smelling like nostalgia. She even played our old playlist, dimmed the lights, and set the table like we were rebooting a memory. When I walked in, she smiled, hopeful. I sat. It was perfect, but something had changed. Me. The pie tasted the same, but it didn't land. Not in my chest. Not in my gut. I thanked her, cleaned my plate, and left the table in silence. Not cold, just done. She sat there afterward,